In this lecture, we will introduce some additional features we can use in Visual Basic.
The first feature we'll take a look at involves handling currency. Let's say we want to write an application that displays money. Well, we can do this, I think. We can do something like the following. We can create a variable called amount. It'll be a double. Let's say it's 25.67, and then we'll include a 6% tax, so we'll multiply it by 1.06. And then we can just display a message box that shows the amount. That works, right? Well, technically, yes, but also technically no. So this does give us the number, it does give us the amount, but it's not formatted as a currency. There's no dollar sign, and we don't specify that we have to have 2 decimal places to denote the cents. Fortunately, Visual Basic does have a method for us that allows us to easily convert any double into the currency format. In fact, this method is called format currency. Original name, I know. But this will simply take a value and it will format it as an actual currency. So this will include the dollar sign in the front and it will include the 2 decimal places at the end. Now the way this method works is it takes a double as an argument. So we can't really do integers and strings and other stuff, but we do need to bring in a number, a double, and this will return a string. So this will not give us a number. I mean, technically it does give a number, but it's a formatted string that includes the dollar sign. Let's take a look at an example of some code where we would use this method. So let's say we have something like this. So we're going back to our earlier example where we have an amount, which is a double, and we take 25.67 and add a 6% tax to it, and we're going to display that amount. And then the next line, we're going to use the format currency method. We're going to pass in the amount as an argument and store that in a string, which we call amount str. And then we display that amount. So the question is, what would be the output of this code? Well, the first output is going to give us the number. So if we were to take 25.67 and multiply it by 1.06, that's going to give us 27.2102. That would be our first output. The second output would take this number and format it as a currency. So what we would get is the dollar sign and then 27.21. So we get the dollar sign and we get the number as 2 decimal places to represent the cents for our currency. The next feature we're going to take a look at involves what we call exceptions. Let's suppose we have the following code in our program. So we have a couple of variables. We have a double variable, which is called amount. And then we have a string variable, which is called myStr. I'm probably just going to say myString. And it's initialized to the string bad user input. So what we're going to do is try to convert the string to a double, store that double in amount, and then we're just going to print a message box that says that we did it. We nailed it. Now there is a problem with this code, specifically the line that involves converting the string to a double. This line is not going to work. And this is because we cannot convert a string to a double if the string is not an exact number. So the way that the 2double method works, the string in there has to be an actual double. Clearly bad user input is not a double. It's not even a number. So this conversion isn't going to work. What we're going to get, or what's going to happen when we try to run our code, is we're going to get what's called a format exception. Now, what is a format exception? It's a specific type of error that says that your argument for the 2double method is the wrong format. But the exception itself is a runtime error. Now, if you've done programming in Java, then you are very, very familiar with exceptions. And just like in Java, if we do not handle the exception, our program is going to crash. It's just going to terminate and we won't be able to continue it. In Visual Basic, we have what are called TryCatch blocks. And these simply allow us to detect and handle exceptions. So if we have a piece of code where a possible exception could occur, we can include a TryCatch block to catch the actual exception and then handle it. So let me give you the format of a TryCatch block. So this is what we have. So we have the word try, and then we would have the code that could cause the exception, and then we have the word catch, and then what comes afterward is exe as exception type. We'll talk a little bit more about this line in a little bit, but underneath that would be the code that would handle the specific exception, and then we would end it with end try. Now, if you're familiar with Java again, you would know that TryCatch blocks also are used in Java, and they work just the same way as in Visual Basic. Just notice that there are some syntax differences. No curly braces, no parentheses, that's fine. So let's see what's going on with this actual format here. Exception type here is just a placeholder to hold a specific exception that we want to catch. So like, for example, if we were using our previous code, we can use format exception. So we would say catch exe as format exception. And that means that if a format exception were to occur, instead of just terminating the program, we would execute the code that comes immediately afterwards. And I should mention with the exe that we can use any name in place of exe. Exe is another placeholder. It's just a variable, kind of similar to how e is used as a variable for TryCatch blocks in Java. Exe is pretty much the equivalent of that. And I'll also mention while I'm here that we can have multiple catches. So we can have a set of code and try to catch something, and we can say catch exe as one exception type, and then some code. We can do another catch exe as another exception type, and we can catch however many exception types that we want. We'll now go back to our earlier example and include the TryCatch block to make sure that if we get a format exception, we can do something about it. So we still have our amounts as a double, we still have our myString variable. So notice that we have our try block or try portion starting right here. So there's our try, and then what comes afterwards is the code that may get an exception. So here we're trying to convert a string to a double that we know isn't going to work. So then we have our catch line. So we have this line right here where we have catch exe as format exception. So what that means is if we encounter a format exception in the try portion of our code, we're going to execute the line afterwards, which says here that we're going to display a message box that says invalid input, try again. Maybe we'll have some code which allows us to go back and change the string here, but this handles it so that way we do not terminate the program. And then we have our end try right here to say that this is the end of the TryCatch block. We'll now mention a few things about new lines and tabs in Visual Basic. Every single programming language out there has a way to print a string on a brand new line. That way, if we're trying to display some text and we want something displayed on a new line, we should be able to do that. So every language has some way of doing it. For example, in Java, we can use system.out.println, or it's ln in parentheses. In C, we can use the escape character /n to represent the new line character. In C++, we have the keyword endl, which represents the end line. And we have several things in other languages as well. But what about in Visual Basic? Well, we have the keyword VB new line to represent the new line character. Let's take a look at an example of how we would use this VB new line character in our code. So here's some code. So we have a string, which we'll call myString, and notice that we initialize it to first line, and then we concatenate our new line character, this VB new line right here, and then we concatenate the string second line. So then let's see what happens after that. So the next line, we're going to concatenate another new line character right here, and then we're going to concatenate the string third line to it as well. So this ampersand equals, I don't think we've used this before. This just means take my string, concatenate the string third line to it, and then store that into my string. It's similar to the plus equals. I think we did that not too long ago. Same thing here, except now we're dealing with concatenation. And then we would show the complete string in a message box. So what is going to be the output in this case? Well, we'll have first line appear on one line, and then we would have the new line character, but this is something that we don't see. If you're familiar with other languages, this is one of those characters that's not actually shown on the computer, but it does make the next thing print on a brand new line. So that means second line would be printed on a brand new line. And then since we have another VB new line, that means another new line character is printed. So that means what comes afterwards, which is third line, would be on a brand new line. I also want to mention that we can use VB new line for labels as well. We're not limited to just displaying text in a message box. So let me show you an example. Here is the exact same code from before. The only difference is the last line down here. So we still have first line, second line, and third line. They're all concatenated together, and we have a new line character between first line and second line, and another one between second line and third line. What this is saying is we're going to take that string, which has first line on one line, second line on another line, and then third line on another line, and we store that string in the text property of a label. So if we were to display that label in a form, we would see first line, second line, and third line, each on different lines. Now, how do we handle tabs in Visual Basic? It's pretty simple. There is a keyword, just like there's a keyword for the new line character. So if we want to insert a tab, we would use VB tab with the T capitalized. So let me give you an example of how this works. It's pretty straightforward. So let's say we have a message box that we want to print, and we would say here, and then we would concatenate a VB tab, and then we would concatenate and here. So we're basically going to print here, and there's going to be this large tab between the two strings. So what this will do is it will print here, and we will see an actual tab, actual space between those two strings.